Hey guys, hope you're doing well. It's a little bit of an early stream this week because I will be watching a movie with the kind of change deadline this week, so that impacts the deadline stream. So I won't be around there, but still a good time I think to actually cover my thoughts and a good time as well to answer your questions before the deadline because I don't think very much will change. We did get quite a bit of team news as well, so those are the main sort of impacts of this week, and I think going forwards when we're talking about tomorrow, I imagine the only slight thing that will change is maybe a few sort of last minute news in terms of who might start and things like that. Hi Javid, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Nice to see you on the stream as well. um so just about my team as well before the questions actually start to flood in. I am actually planning to bring in Saka and Diaz, and the people going out of my team are going to be Barnes and Van Dijk. I did roll a transfer last week in anticipation of this week, and the reason why I've gone for Diaz is mostly because I did need a little bit of money to make way, and with Saka, I just think he's such a huge upgrade. I'm probably one of the last FPL managers to bring in Saka this late into the season. So this is actually his first foray into my team. I'm not expecting him to do anything. I mean, he's really more of a shield at this point in time, but I can't see him being a bad option in this specific game week, especially since he's such a great player. And Kedia will be the striker that I start when it comes to him and Dennis. Dennis will be benched and he'll be my first sub. And the reason why I've gone out Van Dijk into Diaz as opposed to someone like Laporte or even some of the other options, such as simply going for someone like Matip, who's a little cheaper, or Zinchenko or Ake, is mostly because I think with watching the Real Madrid game, I thought Diaz was still the physically most fit defender who was on the field. And I do expect out of Diaz and Laporte that one of them will be playing most of the games towards the end of the season. We know John Stones has struggled with fitness. Walker got re-injured, so that allows Zinchenko probably to play left back, which means that Ake, I think, could have a chance of, deposing maybe Laporte for 1 or 2 games as he gets some rest. He was concussed in the previous Premier League game, and then I think there were almost 2 instances where Laporte could have been subbed off for Pep. One in the first half where at 45 minutes it seemed like Fernandinho was actually kind of running around to try and make sure that he could actually be subbed on for Laporte, who didn't seem fit. And then later in the dying stages of the game, we could see that Laporte was clearly very strained, much the same way that Walker was strained before he re-injured himself, before that kind of drop ball for Vinicius. And I was thinking about actually replacing Mount as well. That would have been my hit this week. But I don't really like the options. I think you have Luis Diaz, who for me is the most interesting Liverpool option at that price range, and then you have Foden. You also have Mahrez as well. But Mahrez is a little bit out of my price reach, and I think Mahrez is more interesting if you're someone who is free hitting. I think he is the punt that people would like because he did get a bit more rest, and it's kind of that point in the season where, because Mahrez has no more Champions League games to play for, you don't have to rest him, and he could play the games. But that's the question, I think. And also you do have the temptation of Jesus as well as KDB, who got a little bit of rest. Pep confirmed that it was tactical, so that was there. But I just don't see the point of really changing my structure. I have Son. A lot of people have made the move to Kane to Son, so I feel quite safe there. Kulusevski was someone who, for me, is untransferable. I think he's just too good value. The games towards the end of the season are great. I might not have him on my 3-hit for 37, so we'll see about that. But definitely would love to have him versus Norwich in Game Week 38. And for me, I think watching him, even though people think he's rotation prone, I just think he's so much more tremendous than Lucas Moura. So no real kind of questions with him and his position in the Spurs team. So for the rest of my team, I think it's pretty set. Hoping that James will do well, but I'm expecting, unfortunately, Chelsea to probably bottle it somehow. So let's just go with the YouTube questions first. So thoughts on Havertz to Mahrez for a hit? Who's the best City mid after KDB? I would agree with you. If you're talking City midfielders, I do think it's Mahrez for the specific week. In terms of the actual perpetuity of Mahrez, I'm not really sure if he's actually worth a hit, because you are suggesting that you're moving on from Havertz. Havertz could also play in Game Week 38, which is interesting. I think if you're free hitting on 37, it might not be worth it to move into a City midfield. I feel like if we talk about Foden, who's a good price comparison to Havertz, the issue with Foden is I feel like he probably still could get rotated in the Newcastle game because he put in such a great shift for Real Madrid. Jay Wavy says Van Dijk, Doherty, Kulusevski to Silva, Zinchenko, Matip. Yeah, Bernardo Silva is actually an interesting option too from the City midfield. He obviously is a very threatening player who doesn't necessarily post the highest expected goal involvements. I do like those moves, but I just think it's a little bit too out there. I think, yes, you need to find a way to move out of Doherty, but I'm not sure if Zinchenko actually starts both games. There's a possibility, but we know Ake can play left back. So let's say if Ake plays left center back this game, there is a possibility that maybe Zinchenko could, unfortunately, maybe miss one game. With Silva, I'd say he's probably going to be nailed because, once again, there's no reason to rest him. And you'll be chasing all the points as much as possible. So the best sort of Man City playing 11 will include Silva. So I do like that transfer. And Virgil van Dijk to Matip, I would agree with. Maybe I would see if you could find another way, or just another option compared to Zinchenko. I might even prefer Alonso over Zinchenko because I think he's more nailed. Will, evening to you as well. Looking forward to this UCL final. I think you're a Liverpool fan, so good luck to you, and may the best team win. Evening to you as well, Jay Wavy. Danielle says Ramsey and White injured, bench boost in the mud. Yeah, unfortunately, I think the thing is, though, this is still going to be the best week to bench boost. So if you're looking for alternative options, you probably want to side grade this week if you can. You can even go into Gordon if you're someone who owns Ramsey, just because you will actually get probably 180 minutes of Gordon. And I think he's actually a player who, given that he takes set pieces and he's also someone who's very active in terms of in play, will be super interesting as an option. That guy says, you're sending Saka to my team. Are you taking him out of yours? Harold, hope you're doing well, and Sahaj, greetings to you. Orion says, still have triple captain / bench boost free hit. Which chip is best for this game week? I think this week, because that's a tough week actually. I think bench boost is still the best for this week. As far as triple captain, I think you could triple captain a Spurs player on the final week in game week 38, and then I think you could free hit on 37. That's my personal opinion. The City game was amazing. I'm actually wearing a Real Madrid shirt right now, so I don't know if you guys can see. But that was an amazing game, and I think I was watching with someone from Discord, and it was 85 minutes of pain really versus City, and we managed to pull it out of the bag somehow. Just a magical season so far. Sahaj, White out. Yeah, I think Tavares is a good option. Unfortunately, because at that sort of price range where, I mean, White is now 4.6, you still can't really downgrade into someone who's that interesting. It probably is going to be Tavares. The alternative option is going to be Emerson, but I don't really like Emerson. So that's kind of my concerns there. I'm just going to quickly head over to Twitter. Do you think I should sell Thomas Leicester for bench boost? Yeah, I don't think Thomas has actually been playing very much, right? Because Castagna and Pereira have been playing. They've been knocked out of the European fixtures. Maybe they get a bit of rest, but yeah. Is this the right Thomas? Or have I made a mistake? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Thomas gets rotated, and he's not really worth it. But at the same time, at a 4.3 price, unless you have the option to go into Tavares, probably not worth moving away from him, I would say. Z, welcome to President. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you being here. I haven't actually seen you too much around the live stream, but do hit me up on either Twitter or Discord, and I'll be happy to sort of invite you to the private chat where we do discuss a lot of things as well, and you can reach out to me if you would like to discuss things about the team or anything else. Otherwise, thank you so much for the support. As far as Nahal, thank you so much for your donation. One to pick from KDB and Son, in your opinion. If we're talking, are you talking about more of a free hit situation this week, or are you talking about KDB and Son with respect to the kind of long term? Because I would say for this specific game week, I'd prefer KDB, but I think heading towards the end of the season, I'd actually prefer Son, because I really think Son is hot. He's nailed. There might still be moments for KDB to rest. And ultimately, I think that final Norwich fixture is also great to own Son for. Thanks again, and once again, thanks for the donation. So you say Kane to Richie and Coutinho to Son to KDB -4 free at 37. Honestly, I do like the Kane to Son move. That's what I was kind of saying to a lot of people, where I think if you are moving out of Kane this week, do make sure you can actually go into Son, or at least someone who's a comparable talisman, because a lot of people have been kind of just moving, you know, someone like Kane to Richarlison, and then not having the funds to do an equivalent sort of talismanic move. I do like Son a lot more than KDB, and when it comes to those transfers, I think that those are good transfers. I would go for Son personally. even especially because you're free hitting a 37 too. Hey Fran, City Madrid game was amazing. Who do you have winning the final? Be as unbiased as possible. So I think we stand a good chance to beat Liverpool in the final. What I am slightly worried about was I thought Benzema had a little bit of a dip in performance, and I think in terms of moments where I imagine Matip will actually play probably. I'm not really sure if we'll be able to kind of dominate through some of the chances that we've created, where we've done a lot of great crosses to Benzema as some of our goals, and I think that's going to be quite restricted versus Van Dijk and Matip. So I'm kind of worried about that. I do like Vinicius in open play versus Trent. Last year we did the exact same thing. That over the top ball that, for example, re-injured Walker, I really do like. I really like the potential of Vinicius to once again do well versus Trent. Last season, of course, I think Liverpool were playing Phillips and Kabak, and also didn't have the same midfield. So I'm not. I think it's going to be a completely different game. But I think we've also stepped up a lot as a team. Carvajal has improved in terms of fitness, and he's found his way back into the team. And I think we have a good shot by having the sort of right subs to probably dominate Liverpool. They have great subs too, with Jota and Diaz, that sort of rotation there. I'm not hugely fond of Firmino, but Keita is always a great sub. I just like the option of us being able to play something like the 4-4-2 that we usually play with Valverde to dominate the Liverpool midfield, and also hopefully shore up our defense when it comes to kind of dealing with Mane on the right-hand side. I do think Mane could actually blow by Carvajal, but I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, probably something like 3-2 or even 2-1. Just because it will be a little nervier in the finals. And I just think we have a better outlet in terms of Vinicius versus Trent than Liverpool has versus any of our players. Because I think last season when I was watching Salah versus Mondi, I thought Mondi, especially now that he's informed defensively, he'll do well versus Salah. So that's kind of my opinion there. But I think Liverpool could also beat us. I'm going to be biased though and say Real Madrid. Liverpool's a great team though. Why no fantasy in UCL? I just didn't have the time earlier in the season to actually invest in terms of watching the games, because I was working late nights and didn't get to watch football. So that's kind of my fear there. I decided not to continue going forwards with UCL fantasy content, because I like giving advice if I watch the games, but because I wasn't watching enough of the UCL games, I decided to drop it. I'll probably look towards doing it this year if I have more time. Now says appreciate it. Getting worried because you have no city mids. I have no city mids. I'm not worried. I feel like I'd much rather get a City defender like Diaz this week, who's probably nailed, and I don't have to make that sort of decision where, for example, Mahrez could get rotated, Foden could get rotated. And the thing is, too, even if a City player is nailed, you know that the hauls could come elsewhere. I remember, even if you're a Foden owner this season, I owned Foden for a very, very long time, but it would take 2 or 3 weeks for him to haul at one time. A lot of Liverpool fans here are going to telling me that Liverpool will win. I think if you check the tape in the 2017-18 final... No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I think hopefully we win. But I completely understand that most of the FPL playing players will think that Madrid will get spanked. We've only taken 2 out of 3 of the bigger EPL teams. I think there's one more to go. And Kedia and Laporte in for Young and Weghorst, a -4 worth it. I'm not so sure about Laporte, my friend, because I think Laporte could get rotated for one game. I do like the move away from Young and Weghorst. In terms of Weghorst, though, do you have a 3 hit and 37? Because I think Weghorst is not a bad option when we talk about forwards with 37. No Karius this time round. That's true. Last year, I think you guys didn't have Karius, and I believe you also were knocked out by Real Madrid. Okay, let's go to Twitter questions now for sure. Liverpool was the last team to beat Madrid in the UCL final, no? Yeah, potentially. Personally think our midfield will dominate. If you start Cruz over Camavinga, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of championing going for Camavinga to start. And I think the intensity of your midfield will be a huge problem. So that's going to be a worrisome thing. I do think if Camavinga can play himself into the starting team, that I would prefer the midfield of... Because we could play a 4-4-2, right? Which is essentially what we do when we play Valverde in the right wing position. He basically deputizes as a right midfielder, but really he just defends almost as a right centre mid. And then we kind of overcrowd the midfield. And we also have Casemiro. And I will remind you that Casemiro starts ahead of Fabinho in the Brazilian national team. I'm just joking. Okay, let's go to Twitter questions. All right, so a lot of options here. So thoughts on this for a bench boost, please. You've 2 free transfers, right? Madison's an interesting one. He did play the full game versus Roma, so it seems like his injury problems aren't huge. Everton versus Norwich, that's an interesting one. It's a great double for Leicester, but I still fear that there might be a game where Madison could be rotated because he might have some sort of hip injury, and I feel like Leicester might not want to re-injure him. But we'll see. I think Madison is a decent punt. I'm not so fond of Coutinho for this week. I don't think that makes sense. I think Coutinho has also been slightly out of form. I don't think the second fixture, I think anytime a team plays Liverpool at Anfield, I can't remember actually if the game is at Anfield. It might not be. Sorry, it's not at Anfield, but still, I still think anytime a team plays Liverpool, and if they're not Man City, I really think you can treat it almost as a single game week where you could be getting an additional +1 or +2 points. Kelly, I think, is also a little bit of a risk this week. I can understand bringing in Mateta, but I guess, yeah, I don't think it's worth kind of squeezing Kelly in just to fit Coutinho. I'd prefer Anderson for the next week because you don't know how nailed Kelly is. I'm not hugely a fan of bringing in Dennis. I'd prefer Nketiah because if we're talking about game week 38, I feel like Nketiah has a good game. Whereas Dennis, for example, isn't great versus Chelsea. And then you might be actually lacking in terms of centre forwards that you'd like to have in game week 38. So that's a little bit of a worrisome thing for me too. This is your original team though. I'm not actually sure if you'd like to take Rafinha out of your team. I still think the fixtures aren't too bad for Leeds. Think about it in this way, where Chelsea are going to be playing Leeds right before the FA Cup final. So I think that's a game where Chelsea could actually rotate a few players. And maybe the goals could come with for Rafinha here. So I kind of like keeping Rafinha, especially since I'm not sure about Madison's status. So since you have Ramsdale, I think unfortunately there's not much to do with the defenders. If you want to go Crystal Palace, go for it. But it's still just a one fixture this week for Crystal Palace. I might even be tempted to punt it on either Tavares or Emerson. Just to kind of make do with it. Or if, let's say, you go for Emerson in the defense, then maybe you can go for Nketiah on the attack and kind of bank in on the Arsenal attack. I'd prefer Nketiah over Dennis, personally. I'm actually going to start I'm Dennis on my bench, so up to you, though. I still think some of the transfers are good. I just don't agree with all the options, especially if you're forced to bring in, let's say, 2 Crystal Palace players this week. I just don't see the value there, as an example. Yeah, if you go to Chirag's team, I have a free hit and bench boost available. When should I use when and how to plan? I still think you have to bench boost this week because you probably want to be bench boosting where your hits are going to justify themselves. And the way that they're automatically justified is when you're playing in a double game week, you get those additional 2 points or at least 1 point from players that you think are nailed. So I think you have to bench boost and free hit 37. So bench boost 36 and 3 hit for 37. That's for me the best play. As far as transfers, yeah, you're going to have to find a way out of Sanchez. I think a cheap keeper option is either going to Pickford or just going downgrade to Foster. I'm not sure if you really want to go into Foster, though, if we're being honest. Definitely going out of Barnes into Saka is essential for you this week when I just look at your structure. Unfortunately, Ramsey might be a doubt, but I feel like you don't really touch Ramsey because the alternative option is Gordon, and I'm not sure if that -4 is worth it. But I would also maybe try to move Schär on as well. And maybe Schär into Tavares could be something that you think about. Yeah, actually Ramsey's tough because Ramsey's second fixtures versus Liverpool, so you might have to move Ramsey to Gordon as well and think that maybe it's going to have a lot of value for you. But what I'm concerned about moving Gordon in is that Gordon's best fixture is going to be game week 37 and you're free hitting there, so I would maybe not touch Ramsey. I'd still bench boost this week, hoping that Ramsey could play in the second fixture, maybe score a screamer versus Liverpool. But I think you maybe accept that you get 2 points from Ramsey and then try to make your transfers around some players who could produce a little bit more. So I'm thinking Schär and then a replacement for Sanchez and a replacement for Barnes and maybe just take a hit there. So that guy, 1 free transfer, target, attack. Yeah, I mean, Ronaldo is definitely one form of attack. I think even going into Kane is actually is a way to attack. I don't know if you agree with me. That's possible. White will have to be transferred out. Unfortunately, there aren't many good kind of options to replace White with. I'm not sure if he actually gets to start. It seems like from Arteta's news and presser that White might be, facing like a late fitness battle. And then the second game is Tottenham, so I'm not really fond of that. But I'd probably prefer a keeper transfer as well. Maybe moving out of Saw would be nice. I don't know what your plan is for Game Week 37. If you could let me know, because I think that also impacts what keeper you bring in. Because if you bring in a keeper, let's say like Schmeichel, he makes sense because 36, 37 is great. But if you're free hitting on 37, maybe you could just think about a keeper who has good fixtures on 36 and 38 to bring in. I think that's an option. But definitely, I think Ronaldo to Kane is not a bad way to go. If you're free hitting 37, I feel like maybe just going for a City keeper, if that's possible, would be quite sensible. And then maybe just punting. Maybe you can keep White. I think, unfortunately, there just isn't too much value moving away from him because I feel like Tavares. I mean, what's the ceiling going to be if you take a hit? Maybe Tavares will reach similar sort of results, and maybe White will be fit anyway. So I think Kane and hopefully a City keeper if you can afford that in your structure. I'm not sure if it's possible, but I think that would be the best way to go. So let's say Liverpool with 1981. That's a fair point, Leanne. I'm just going to refresh the YouTube chat just before I go back into the Twitter questions. Camavinga as a sub, he makes risky tackles, so you don't want him to start. I think he makes risky tackles, but I feel like he makes tackles that he's comfortable that he can reach. So for me, it's quite different. Like I wouldn't say that he's too reckless of a player. Yes, I remember, was it the game versus Sevilla, for example, where he did make a risky tackle? I agree that he does sometimes do that, but I feel like he is, for the most part, very composed as a player, so I do like that. Oh, sorry, did he not have a free hit 7? Who didn't have a free hit? I'll have a look in a sec. Rommel says he's got Kane and Coutinho, 2 free transfers, and will be moving both on. I guess if you don't want to have Coutinho, which is strange, I feel like Coutinho is probably best for the next week. You'd probably want to go for Son, and then maybe someone like Jesus if you really wanted to punt this week for a striker. The alternative would be Richarlison if you have a free hit in 37. If you don't have a free hit in 37. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. Is the bench was active here? Oh gosh. Couple transfers we have to make then, I suppose. White, Ramsey, Broya, and CR7 are going out, and Kedia, Richarlison, Diaz, and Jota, Diaz. I'm kind of worried about bringing in Jota and Diaz though. I would actually prefer Foden. Don't you think there's an opportunity? Because I feel like Jota and Diaz will both start one game, and the ceiling's quite low there. And I know I said I'm low on Foden, but ironically, I think he's still a better option than Jota or Diaz. Am I wrong? I could be. I like the moves in general, though. I think all the players you're going into are sensible. And at least you're not doing a move like Ronaldo into Kane, for example. Sorry, Kane into Richarlison, which I'm not hugely a fan of, unless you can get Son back. But the way you kind of have it structured, I think I do like it. Eshdeep said he has no chips left, 0.3 left in the bank, and can take 1 hit as well. I think the starting team looks good. Probably you want to just move on away from White. I'd probably start Gordon over White if I was to keep this structure. Watkins will probably play both games. Not the loveliest fixtures, but at least you've got a good single, and Werner could be rotated 1 game as well. I'd prefer to keep Mount, I suppose, in the structure. I think you'd like to play Gordon over White. I still think the fixtures are good. Yes, they're away from home, but this Everton team have shown that they're quite capable in terms of building consistent chances, and he is actually a focal point of the team. And White, I feel like, especially with his injury concern, you probably want to play Gordon, and I think you want to go Jesus, and you could actually avoid the hit, in my opinion, because the rest of the team, I think, has a very good week. So I'd be happy with that. Yeah, I feel like I think it's Foden or Diaz for me, especially since Jota started the last game and Luis Diaz was so instrumental for Liverpool to kind of make that sort of late destruction of Villarreal possible. A-gang. So 1 White out for Diaz for free. That's a fantastic move. White out for Alonso/Laporte and Martinelli for Mahrez for a hit. I feel like with Martinelli and Mahrez, it's not worth it. I feel like you go for 1, because I feel like Martinelli and Mahrez are in similar situations where when they play and when they start, they're definitely great options. But you have Martinelli at such a cheap price. You don't need to take the hits as well. And I feel like you just get such a huge upgrade by going out of White into Diaz. So for me, the upside is all in the first move. Harold, just captain. Who would you captain? Whew. I'd captain Saka, potentially. Saka or Cancelo. I always like captaining a midfielder. Um, Thoughts of this on a free hit. Would prefer Mahrez and Jota, but can only get to them by downgrading Ederson to Schmeichel, which you don't love. Agree with that. I don't think downgrading Ederson makes sense. I think even moving to Ederson is actually a very, very good move for this week specifically. Yeah, I like the moves that you've made. So you would then be playing a 3-5-2, right? Yeah, I like the move. Love it, actually. Hey, Fran. Wildcard not gone to plan, 6.8k to 14k in the 2 weeks and sitting it, largely because of Sun. So thinking Mount plus Coutinho to Sun plus KDH for a hit. Free hit 37. Alternatively, I could just do Coutinho to Foden for free. I feel like, Will, because of your Liverpool preference, you might have deliberately not gone away from Sun. But it seems like the corner has turned finally. I'm sorry about the drop. I'm sure you'll actually make it back, though. Because your team is already still in a good position. I feel like you have some players that people are only transferring in this week, and the Mane punt could still work out. Either way, though, Mount plus Coutinho to Son plus KDH for a hit. 37. Yeah, I think if you can go Mount into Son, I just think that's gigantic upside. I'm not Coutinho to Foden for a free. It's not a bad move either, but I feel like Son is the one who's hurting the most. He's probably nailed to play both games. I still think both games are open scoring. And with Foden, I feel like Wolves, any team, a big team plays Wolves, the ceiling's a little low. So that's kind of my concern there, especially since they're playing at Molineux. And then with Newcastle, I mean, Newcastle could put on a good performance for them. They were kind of destroyed by City last time out. So yeah, I think I like the more aggressive move. Is there a way you can not go to KDH though? So for example, actually you are free hitting anyway, so that's fine. I think yeah, that makes sense. Because then you have Sun in 38 and you and yeah, that kind of gets you away from that problem. I'll let you kind of just update your query here. Tech XCO. So the plan is to free at 37. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, if anyone could also let me know what their plans are, that would be quite helpful, just in terms of like thinking strategically about 37, 38, those sort of things. The options I'm thinking are Kane to Barnes for Richarlison KDB, Kane to Mount to Jesus KDB, Kane to Barnes to Ramsdale, and KDB, Ederson, sorry. Kane, Barnes, James. Not a huge fan of C and D, to be honest. I just feel like when most of your when half of your transfers are based around defensive options, it's quite tough to sort of justify. I know C is more of a move to move on Ramsdale. I do like Ramsdale to Ederson, but I'm not sure if it's worthwhile if what we get out of, because we're going out of Kane as well, and that's a tough hit to take. But Mount, James to Foden, Diaz. Agree with the E move not being such a good option. If I actually look at your team first, so I can kind of have like a fresh perspective. Definitely we want to go out of Barnes. He's horrific. The backline looks great. The way I see it, though, is I think with Game Week 38, you don't have many transfers between then and now, because you'll be free hitting at 37, so you don't really get like a transfer back. I do really like the value of maybe sticking with James, to be honest, this week. I actually think it's not ridiculous to maybe just make a move on Barnes, if that's possible. I feel like Barnes to Kulusevski is a good move. You might disagree with me, and I know Kulusevski's expected points is for some reason very, very low in a week where people still think that Kane and Son will hold. And I feel like when you've been watching Kulusevski lately, anytime Spurs score, I think he's very much 66% there in terms of being a part of it. So the way I see it is you can avoid hits by going Barnes to Kulusevski, and it solves another problem in Game Week 38 where what is so poor about his double, though? I feel like it's a poor week if you own a Spurs defender, but what is the point of how bad is this week necessarily, like, for a Spurs attacker, if that makes sense? I feel like I think I went back And I looked at most of the North London derbies within the last 3 or 4 years, especially with Arteta. And most of the time, I've seen Son and Kane score in them. And as I said, I feel like Kulusevski always gets involved nowadays. And then when it comes down to the Liverpool game, when we were watching Conte's Spurs versus Liverpool, I thought it was a really open game. And the way Liverpool play a high line, it's going to be quite similar to the way, for example, City was able to create so many chances with Kevin De Bruyne in between the lines. And I feel like Kulusevski could benefit there as someone who can actually pass between those lines. Yeah, that's kind of my concern. Because every other move you're taking involves hits. So it's not just the case where, Kulusevski might have a lower ceiling than, for example, KDB, Jesus. You also have to think about who you're taking out. Like, for example, you might regret a lot moving Kane out of your team. And Kane is, part of around 4 to 5 transfers. And feel really vulnerable only one City asset when they have such a good double game week, especially since nearly everyone owns Cancelo. That's true, but I feel like how many people actually are going to move into City players? If you looked at last week, the effective ownership across the world in terms of like top 10k, top 100k ranks, I don't really think the ownership for many City players is super high. In fact, some people, an odd amount of people own Sterling. They're probably going to move Sterling on, and a lot of them are probably going to feel like, oh, I'm getting burnt by Sterling, I'm moving straight back into Son. And then I think your biggest threat this week is going to be Foden. So maybe you could make a move to Foden, but it seems like you don't even like that Foden move. Jesus is another transfer. I agree, but I feel like those aren't going to destroy you. And you have to think about how much points your team can output themselves in comparison to the people you're bringing in. So I feel like Kane has a great ceiling this week still. He's someone who perennially scores in the North London derby, and I feel like KDB, he probably plays 2 games. So I do like, for example, I probably like B the most, I would say. Because I'm not fond of the Kane to Richarlison move, as I mentioned. And I feel like with B, if you add the -4, I still think that the value of capturing City is there, if you really think City is quintessential. But as I said, my F move would be just Barnes to Kulusevski. And probably have faith that, like, City's ceiling, I feel like versus Wolves isn't super high. I think Wolves have always kept a very, very low scoreline versus top teams. We saw them go 1-0 down versus Liverpool, 1-0 down versus City earlier in the season, and this Newcastle team isn't terrible. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of how I visualize it. So either B or F, but I completely value your opinion as well. Let's see. I'm just gonna go back to the YouTube chat just to see if there's any kind of brief updates there. So Sahaj says Robbo plays Tottenham, rested versus Villa, hard sell. I don't think he's a hard sell because it's always tough to move out of Robbo unless you have a 3 hit in 37 and you have a plan around him in 38. We are saying that he's going to get rotated versus Villa, but that might not even happen, right? It might be the case that I think Klopp sees it as a tough game, and Robertson has always been one of Liverpool's most fittest players. I do think he should get rested. So yeah, if there is a time to move Robbo out, it's this week. It's always just a tough move though. Ben White to Matip and Broya to Nketiah for -4. Yeah, those are fantastic moves, Mystic Monkey. Fantastic. Funny Meme says, I'm willing to play triple captain. Who should I give the ban to, Jesus or Salah? I think you just put it on Salah, honestly. I think I don't think Salah will get rested these 2 games. I think he's super fit. So anytime he gets rested, which was the case versus Newcastle, you have the opportunity to actually play Salah and think that he plays for the next few games, even if there are a lot of back-to-backs. And yeah, with Jesus, I feel like he could get rotated because if you look at Jesus' run of form, he's played a lot of games lately. Richarlison or Nketiah, I think I'd still prefer Richarlison if let's say nothing in your team changed, and you weren't taking additional hits. I think Richarlison's better than Nketiah, but otherwise Nketiah is a good option if you have to make transfers or a hit to get to Richarlison. 10 points ahead of my mini league rival, playing my bench boost this week. Cucurella to Mikolenko, White to Matip, Whitehorse and Nketiah for a -8. Mikolenko's a good option, but I just feel like Everton's ability to get clean sheets is rather low. White to Matip is a fantastic move once again, and Whitehorse and Nketiah is not a bad move too. Yeah, I'd be happy with those moves. Ultimately, I guess, yeah, Cucurella's ceiling is quite low because that Man United team is actually looking in good form. Mountain Kulusevski to Son plus Gordon. Fair enough. I think if you can move to such a premium option like Son, then that's nice. I don't really like Kieran Dewsbury Hall, though. So you're kind of going for, I mean, Gordon is not a bad player in terms of open play, but I think Kieran, in the role that he plays right now, especially the one versus Roma, I feel like he's just not going to get involved. But since the transfer is actually between Son and Gordon and Mount and Kulusevski, I feel like that's comparable. How many hits are you taking, though, to get to that move, though? Jabaited says, do you think only Cancelo from Man City is okay? I actually think it's okay, personally. I just had the opportunity to move to Diaz without taking a hit, and that was quite nice for me, so I'm quite happy with that. Your bench boost, all doublers, one free transfer. That's fine. I think, yeah, you can live with double City. I mean, you can live without any non-City players, in my opinion. Because for me, Laporte is probably one of the more highly owned City players. You're not going to tack too much unless Laporte, let's say, scores a goal. And then when it comes to the midfielders and forwards, everyone's going to have one of their options. So some people are free hitting into Mahrez. Some people have kept Foden for a while. Some people are moving out of Sterling. Some people are going into KDB for hits. So I feel like if you're not taking hits, you have to value that when you consider, what the threat is versus people who have gone into City players who more than likely are taking hits. Best defender under 4.5 this week. I still think it's Nuno Tavares. Thoughts on Foden to Luis Diaz as a punt to free up a City place to get Jesus as well. Because you get Jesus, I feel like it's worth it as a punt. I feel like Foden and Diaz have similar ceilings this week, with Diaz maybe just a bit higher because he will 100% probably start this next game versus Tottenham. Done the Sun move, really hoping Mount doesn't haul. Good luck, Will. I've got Mount and Sun, so either way, I'm not too plussed. But I hope it works out for you. Sahaj says, DM'd my structure for next 3 hits feel wise. Yep, happy to look at that. Abel FPL says, Watkins and Kedia, Havertz, KDB, and Robbo to Matip for a -4. Yeah, I like those moves. Just because you actually get KDB, I feel like it is worthwhile. Who would you bench from Madison, Gordon, Reece, and Robbo? Tough question there, actually. I'd probably still bench Gordon, in my opinion. Do I think Matip will play both games? Yes. Funny thing is, I was doing a little bit of research into Liverpool's starting 11, so they love actually playing Konate in all the cups, right? So I think there's a very high chance that Matip plays both games, and then Matip actually misses the FA Cup final, and maybe Konate plays the FA Cup final. Because Konate actually played the last FA Cup game versus Man City as well, if you remember. So we've seen Klopp play Konate in big games versus big opponents. In cup games, so I feel like there's an opportunity for Matip to play both games, which actually covers him versus Robertson very, very well this week. Well, you can go Robertson to Laporte. I'm not a huge fan of Robertson to Laporte. I prefer Robertson to Diaz. I just think Diaz is slightly more fit than Laporte. You want to get Son, but can do Luis Diaz to Son next week and get Luis Diaz in this week. That's not a bad move too, Golden Boys. I think that works. But at the same time, you have to think about, does that impact other hits for your team? Do you foresee any issues with Game Week 37? Would there be any other players you want to bring in? Because I feel like if you're going to bring in Son immediately next week, that clearly suggests to me that you think that Son is definitely a great option, even on a single. So why not just bring in Son when he's actually got a double this week? And especially in a game, even the North London Derby, where he's already scored this season. And the same with the Liverpool game being hopefully an open game once again. So you're planning for a -4, Son plus Gordon plus KDH versus Kulusevski to Foden, have Coutinho, back 5, Dennis, Richarlison, Pukki. I'm not a huge fan of Coutinho, but I think you probably are not a free hitting 37 player. Anytime you can get Son in the team, I think is nice. So I think that's fair enough. Ramsey injury pushed you for another hit. What have you gone for in terms of the hit, Anas? I'm going to go back to Twitter. So Aman Khan has 2 free transfers. He's recovered from the bad free hit. Perfect. Well done. Happy for you. You plan to do Ramsey to Gordon. Definitely want to do Martinelli to Kulusevski by 37, but don't see a reason to delay the transfer. Interesting. Yeah, no chips left. You plan to do Ramsey to Gordon. Sorry, yeah. I've literally just read the same thing. Which 4.6 M defender should I bring in to play ahead of Mateta this week? I still think it's Tavares. Because I feel like a lot of people will either be playing Ramsdale or Ben White, either by virtue of some sort of bench boost structure or just having Ramsdale for all this time. And I feel like Tavares hedges quite well. I'm not confident about Emerson getting clean sheets, so I really couldn't care about Emerson this week. Unless you really had a lot of faith in Spurs, or you already have some Arsenal defenders and you want a little bit of diversity and spread in your team. Yeah, so I think you can bring in Kulusevski now. Martinelli did look quite good last game, but once again, we've seen many iterations where, there's constant rotation there. And I think Kulusevski for me, it's like with Lucas Moura, he probably gets subbed off at 60 minutes, and then I feel like Arsenal are a team that actually score earlier in games as opposed to later in games. You think Sessegnon is better than Emerson as well? That's potentially true, but there's but what I don't like about Sessegnon is I just think that Emerson actually has a better shot. I don't think Emerson's very good at crossing. I don't think Sessegnon is very, very good at open play either. I think both of them are quite shocking, to be honest. But when it comes to actually scoring, which is actually some of the positions that the fullbacks actually fall into, I actually probably would prefer Emerson, given that he's already backed it up with, I think, 2 goals this season. So cash for Charlison and Matip in. Robbo gets benched for Villa. Todd is not high ceiling. Fair enough, I agree with you. But I still feel like Cash. What is the ceiling with Cash though? Because he's playing Liverpool. I guess you're just sort of banking the one Burnley game, right? Yeah, so that's kind of my worry there. Richarlison as well. I feel like Richarlison is still a move for next week. If you can go... Sorry, who are you benching in the structure, actually? Because if you say you're bringing Richarlison in, who gets benched? I'd just like to know. Hey, Fran, looking to bench boost this week, was planning on replacing Sa and getting Diaz and Matip in for Shah and Cody. Any other thoughts on if I should use the bench boost, and if so, what changes should I make? Have 2.7 in the bank. Perfect. Right, so I think a Ruben Diaz transfer is on the cards for sure with one of the defenders, which you've already mentioned. Perfect. Matip in for... Yeah, honestly, I think both moves are fantastic. Literally fantastic. Any other thoughts on if I should use the bench boost, and if so, what changes should I make? Man, I think you've got to get out of... I feel like you want to get out of Barnes. But then again, I can't really see anyone you can go out of Barnes for. I would love to go out of Barnes personally. As a Barnes owner, I can't stand him. He's going out of my team. And especially since he started versus Roma and then was subbed off at halftime again. It's tough. I just don't see the value in Barnes. Like the fact that Ayoze Perez can also start ahead of Barnes as well, it's just tough. I would like to go out of Barnes. If you can go out of Barnes and maybe go for like even if you could actually go for Madison, I wouldn't even mind that for a hit. Maybe I'm crazy, but I just feel like Barnes, his expected minutes is shocking. Like if we look at the last 5 games with Barnes, is this Barnes? No, this isn't Barnes. Sorry. All right, that was a mistake. Yeah, if we look at Barnes, this guy has played 113 minutes of football in the last 5 game weeks. I can't stand him. I can't stand him. And he scored versus Everton, yes, but I feel like he just got a tap in there. He has good runs, but I feel like in terms of just actually, in open play, does he actually make good decisions? And this season, I feel like he's definitely gone off of a cliff when it comes to that. The directness that was there has kind of turned into a player who makes, I think, a lot of incorrect decisions and actually kind of stifles attacking play. So I'd like to go out of Barnes potentially. I just think he's completely out of form, and I think the manager agrees. Or at least that's what the manager is suggesting with all the kind of benchings too. So I'd try to go out of Barnes if possible. I think if you got 0 point, I mean, you could go into Madison, right? We're talking basically a 7.0 midfielder. I mean, Bernardo Silva's... Can we do that? Can we do that? No, we can't because we got Jesus. Rafinha. Not a crazy option. Not the best double, though. I think the most edgelord pick is actually going into Zaha potentially, so that it sets you up for the next week. But yeah, maybe you just keep Barnes. Maybe you just keep Barnes and then you just think about moving him out next week. Because I like the... I can't back Madison because I feel like he'll get rotated 1 game. Zaha has only 1 game. And then Rafinha. I mean, Rafinha might be the one punt that I'm okay with if you think he's going to do well versus Brighton and Brentford, which could be possible. But yeah, if you don't fancy the Rafinha move, I think maybe just move away from it. Odegaard's another move as well, but I don't know. I just feel like the ceiling with Odegaard isn't very high. I mean, if we look at like Smith Rowe's minutes, 1819, and someone like Odegaard who's played 2,400 minutes, and the fact that he's still outscored by Smith Rowe kind of tells you what kind of quality of FPL asset Odegaard is. He's more of a creative option as opposed to someone who actually scores goals. Yeah, I did the exact same thing as you with the Barnes decision. And happy to own it as well. I mean, it wasn't even the Barnes-Madison decision. It was the fact that I didn't go for Saka since game week 30. This is the week where I didn't go for Saka. At this point in time, they were both 6.5 in price. And the idiot that I am, I refused to go Saka. There were even weeks where I think I attempted to go Martinelli here, and then I captained Martinelli as well. And you'll be reminded that Saka scored a penalty here. And then the next week also decimated me. But anyways, my rants about Barnes aside, I'll leave you with kind of the thoughts in terms of the midfielders. Konate might play against Spurs to cover for Son's pace. I think that's possible, but I still kind of back Matip to play. I don't think Matip's a particularly slow player either. Is Jesus this week a risk? I don't think so, because I think the forward options are so poor. Like for me, when you're comparing to Richarlison, who has a knock, and then Nketiah, who, even though he has good expected goal involvements, I'm just not super fond of. I still feel like Jesus is proving to be a good option this week, and I think he has proven to Pep as well in this late half of the season that he can be trusted. So I think he will get the minutes that you're looking for as a manager. Anas says he's gone from Foster, Shar, Weghorst, and Ramsey to Pickford, Laporte. Yeah, I think, sorry, I might have read that earlier, but very reasonable. You moved Barnes out for Gordon. That's a possibility too, especially if you're looking out at Barnes. Maybe he's a good way. This could be a good week to move into someone like Gordon. Save yourself a little bit of cash for next week. That's a very, very fair transfer, and really well pointed out, Michael. What's the ceiling for Son plus Gordon versus Foden plus Mount till the end of the season? Can bring Son. I like Son plus Gordon because if you're not free hitting in 37, then I think Gordon's ceiling for 37 is actually ridiculously high. And then when you think about it, by the time you touch 38, you can probably find a transfer out. Son will probably still be your captain in gaming 38, which I really like. Mount has a great fixture though versus Watford. I think it's actually going to be quite similar. But when you add that -4 in, I think it's almost going to be similarly balanced, if I'm being honest. However, if you actually, I think one thing to think about too is that Son does present himself as a captaincy option in 38. So because you will probably be captaining Son over, let's say, people who might prefer someone like a Salah or even Mount as a comparison there, maybe Son's just a bit better, that move, just so you can actually justify that you've gotten a captain that you can double the points for. So when you evaluate them, it's like, what is the ceiling of Son's points individually, and not consider them as a pair because you have a captaincy option within Son. So I kind of like Son and Gordon with the hit. Justin says, my current team, Schmeichel, Robertson, Trent, Cancelo, James, Laporte, Salah, Saka, Odegaard, Mount, Havertz, Nketiah, Broja, Gelhardt, Havertz out 4, also thinking Robertson out. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. Why not think about maybe something like KDB and Matip, Justin? I think those are good moves. Christoph, hey, hi Frank. Hi Christoph. Hope you're doing well. History suggests Kane gets a return versus Arsenal minimum. That's true. Best 5 mil defender for this free hit this game week. The problem is Matip and Cash are 5.2, so you can't include them. So I feel like it just has to be Nuno Tavares, as depressing as that is. And I don't think... It's so hard to call... He's going to be the best just because he exists as an option, unfortunately, Mark. Yeah, I completely understand you there. Christoph says, Trent and Gordon or Matip and Havertz just for this week. Please share your thoughts with me. Well, Barnes is probably the reason why I'm like within the 85k rank right now, as opposed to something like 30k. But that's completely my fault, so I'll own up to it. Oh, sorry, Z. I'll definitely have a look at your DM. Thank you so much for sending the DM, and once again, thank you for joining as a member. I think Christoph, I still prefer. I think I prefer Trent and Gordon, just because I'm not sure what the ceiling is really with Havertz this week. I feel like the Wolves game is the tougher game, and then maybe he gets rotated versus Leeds, where I think he's expected to score in the Leeds game, and then probably less so versus Wolves. So I kind of like Trent. And just I think the ceiling whenever Liverpool have a dangerous week when it comes to keeping a clean sheet, I think I always prefer having Trent as an attacking option over Matip. And yes, I do have deep-rooted issues with Barnes, but yeah, I think I've just said that for the 50th time, so I'm not going to talk about Barnes anymore for the rest of this live stream. Pookie, Foden, James, De Jesus, Luis Diaz, Alonso for a -8. You're going full punt mode. Fair enough. Completely respect that. man, I can't really disagree with the move if you want to go full punt. It seems like the Pookie party has stopped for now. Jesus is much more interesting. Alonso has been... He's the side grade that I think a lot of people don't have the sort of... I think the sort of balls to do, if I'm being completely honest, because you get that money back, and because you're allowed to kind of push into Luis Diaz, I kind of like that as an option. I don't know if I love the Foden move to Luis Diaz, but for me, I think if you could skip that move, I feel like you're in a better position. Because for me, I think they're in similar positions. I think Foden played a very tough game versus Newcastle, therefore he might be rested. But then he still has a good game ultimately versus Wolves. I think he still could be a threat there. And then with Diaz, he's probably going to play that Tottenham game. And then I think Jota will actually play as a starter versus Villa. So I feel like maybe that transfer doesn't have to happen for a -4. Trent to Matip from Mount to Son, or Trent almost a no-brainer. That's a tough one. I think the upside of Son does tell me that Son is nice. Yeah. Just gonna answer. I'm gonna quick fire answer some questions right now, especially some message requests. I'm gonna start with Z as well because he's just a member. You never asked about your team. Thank you so much for asking, and also thank you for watching the videos in silence. You just watch your videos every week to get some info, so this is your first time asking your opinion. Any suggestion about your team or captain? Wow, so you still have Livramento. Rodrigo's interesting, but we could maybe move away from him. Interesting. I like the fact that you have Alonso, so that covers you quite well. If you could let me know how much money you have in the bank, unless I can see it. Can I see it from this? If you can tell me how much money you have in the bank, Z, I could actually probably help you out a little bit more. Yep, I can see your current team, though. It's still actually a very good current team, I would say, for this week. In fact, I probably wouldn't make too many moves around it. I would think that... Ooh, okay, 0 in the bank. So that's tough, because I think I would say going out of Mount is interesting to me. I feel like going out of Mount for a hit just isn't that worthwhile. Yes, there's a lack of, I suppose, City players in this team. If we go out of Rodrigo, 6.2 mil, drop him to a 4.6, we'll get 1.6 back. It's tough, because we can't really move Mount into anyone who's extraordinary. If we go out of Doherty... I think it's a little... Okay, if you use all your chips, that actually means that you don't have a 337, which is quite nice, because I was thinking here that rolling isn't terrible. I think one option that you could go for is maybe just... Are you benching Ramsdale for sure? Because I feel like you want to play Ramsdale. And then as far as transfers, I'm thinking that maybe if you downgrade Rodrigo, and then, let's say, move into a 4.6 striker... then you could actually play Doherty and then bench one of the strikers if you'd like to do that for a -4. So you could go into Diaz. Because I think, can't you go from Doherty to Diaz if you kind of sell one of the strikers? And then would you not rather prefer playing Diaz over someone else? If you can answer that for me, then I think that would be quite interesting. Hey Fran, looking for bench boosting 36. Do you have any change in the current lineup? I mean, I don't love João Pedro, but I completely understand why you have him. There's no one else really at that price point because Nketiah is the other option, and you already have him. I think you've done the right moves there. And then with the bank, though, that's quite a lot in the bank. I mean, I'd much rather have Son, personally. Hey Fran, I've got one free transfer and chasing 70-90 points in my money league. This is my bench boost team. Any suggestions? Welcome. Cheers. I know Dean plays over Young. You've got 0.5 mil in the bank too. Yeah, that's fine. Well, I mean, it's just going to be a transfer. I actually don't know how much Young is because I haven't actually seen many people owning Young. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to quickly check. Young 4.7, fair enough. And then, wow, you could go into Matip though, can't you? I think, can't you go Young into Matip and then just call it a day? I think that's the best move for you. Because yeah, I think that's it. Oh, 3 Liverpool already. What am I missing here? Oh, you got Trent. Sorry, my bad. I didn't. So sorry. I didn't see yet Allison as a keeper. Okay, it's a tough move. We can't even go Zinchenko, right? Yeah, we can't go Zinchenko. I mean, with 3 City as well. I mean, I think the move is just to go for Nuno Tavares potentially. Otherwise, yeah, I think you just go for Nuno Tavares because I think the only comparison there is just between Nuno and Emerson, and I'm not really sure what kind of belief I have in Emerson really. Ryan, so Mount Tamares and Chris Wood and Kedia don't know who to go for Doherty. Planning to free hit. They're asking for how to go into Sun. Yeah, I think it doesn't seem like... I think you've got to go out of Robertson to go into Sun. You could go out of Weghorst as well. Is that an option? Yeah. I mean, it feels like you have to go Emerson in the structure. So I think like one of the things that is on my mind is I think like Weghorst may be seating a little bit low. You could maybe drop him. Like if you go to Gelhardt, that could free up the money for you to go into Sun, and then, but the problem is that still leaves you with a defensive sort of problem. And then Raya as well is kind of sitting there as someone who kind of irks me. I feel like Robertson is probably the one to go when we're talking about money, and then the amount of money you save by going to Matip is quite interesting. That 2.0. That probably allows you to get actually a better defender. Maybe you could actually get yourself a City defender. And if you want to go for that Mahrez punt and you want to drop Son, fair enough. That could be an option. I think Tavares does play both. He's been playing most of the games. Tierney's not going to come back. I think we've seen Tavares play recently in a back 5 and a back 4. So no real issues. Just the thought about the... Also, I think Mane has greater hold potential than Salah now because of form and because he has more central positioning in the front line and Diaz's inclusion, so that could go into a Son Mane transfer. Not entirely wrong, but remember also Salah does have a little bit of a price valuation because he gets the penalties. Just the thought, but the main concern is still keeper options. Yeah. I think if you can move into Ederson, I'd be quite happy to sort of back you doing that. But because the move into someone like Diaz is so much more simpler, that's an option too. However, you could think about going for... Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you kind of have to just keep Sa, hope he has, you know, a lot of save points from playing versus Chelsea and City, and just hope for the best there. Would you rather go Young Coombs to Richarlison for free and Captain Cancelo, or go Kane to Richarlison and Gordon to KDB for a -4 and Captain Kevin? I can't really back going out of Kane, and especially not into Richarlison this week. I just don't. I feel like a lot of people have been thinking about 37, like the impact of that, but why make that transfer that now, if that makes sense? Like I think Kane has a very good week, and I think having Son and Kane is great versus Arsenal, even versus Liverpool potentially. I'd play the first line. I mean, I'd even be happy to just to play Gordon. So Arsenal haven't kept a clean sheet for a long time, so that's what worries me. And then with Pickford, I think he does a little bit better with that kind of backline away from home. Godfrey's also injured, so not a huge fan of them. I just feel like you don't need to take that hit for the keeper. Mio says, which transfer combination is the best? One of these, Adam to Dennis, Basilva to Matip. Fair enough. Adams to Richarlison plus Weghorst and Kedia. I like option 2. Benching is next week headache. I mean, that's the thing. Anytime you set yourself up for a bench boost, you're going to have benching headaches in the future. But I think you kind of hope that the bench boost works out, and then you just kind of play off of that. Michael, so you think you're going to risk it? 4 good fixtures in 2 game weeks, motivated off the win against Chelsea, playing to avoid relegation. You can comfortably bench all 3 of them in game week 38. Very nice, my friend. It's a nice team. No complaints. Is there somebody better than Alonso for this week, as I fear he may get rotated? I don't think so. I think the thing we've seen with Chelsea lately is a lot of the individual players have been playing bad. And one of the players who's actually consistently played well alongside Reece James and Rudiger has been Alonso. So I really feel like his position's locked down, unless they just feel like they need to rotate him. But even if they rotate him, I feel like they'll probably start him in the game and then actually sub him off, so that they can actually get into a winning position and then take him off. 3 hitting after this week. Should I do any transfers or just burn the free transfer? Thinking either no transfer or Kane. Richarlison maybe also cool to Son. That's interesting. Actually, you've got such a stacked team there. I mean, I'd play that back 5 in a heartbeat, but I'd say the same with the midfield. And you can't move Havertz into Diaz, but you could move Havertz into Foden. I think Havertz into Foden's interesting, or you just leave it. I'm also thinking even Schmeichel is not too... If you like the actual team in terms of the outfield players... Maze, hello again. Need to set myself up for a good bench boost to rebound from a terrible game week. What moves would you recommend me to do? 2 free transfers, 0.1 in the bank. So we can definitely move out of Havertz, definitely move out of Doherty. A shame about the injury issues on the team, but at least everyone plays for the most part here. And you've got 0.1 in the bank. Interesting. Do we have a free hit, though? So I think Matip has to be the first thought in terms of a cheap player. But something has to give in terms of money, right? Money in the bank. What about... so tough here. I think moving to Matip is super nice. Dubravka is another question, but then I feel like, is it worth it for a -4 for a budget keeper? Probably not. Moving away from Havertz is something I'm tempted to do, especially since you have 2 free transfers. If you go for Matip, that would lock you in triple Liverpool. Could go for someone like Foden this week. I think you and all right, I'll check my old comments later. Foden over Son. Green signal for the moves then. These are the plays I could buy if sell Rodrigo and Doherty for Broja. Interesting. Matip's not bad, yeah, for sure. Matip's a good option. But -8 already, since you have 2 free transfers. You already... Oh, okay. You already did 2 free... Oh, I see. Interesting. Well, if you've already made your transfers... Are you bench boosting, by the way? It's a weird situation here. So I feel like... I'd skip the transfers, in my opinion. I'm just going to quickly go back to some of the other chats. Any suggestions to get rid of Mateta for a bench boost? So debating Mount and Pookie to Saka / what? I think it has to be Saka, 100%. Tied for 7th in the world. Oh, yeah, I remember you tweeting, actually. Man, that's so crazy. That's so crazy. Oh, debating Mount and Pookie to Saka / Watkins. I think Mount to Saka is a good move. I just don't know if Pookie to Watkins is a good move. Because I feel like Pookie has 2 scoreable games, and then Watkins has like a ceiling of a single game week. That's kind of how I feel, because I don't know if you need to take an additional hit for Watkins as well. Maybe going out of... What's your options for 37? Yeah, I agree with you. You don't want to have 3 Villas, and especially Mount is interesting game week 38. So you could definitely take Coutinho out. At the same time, though, as I'm suggesting, I feel like if you just go Mount into Saka, you would be left with only 2 Aston Villa players. And since you don't have... Okay. Because, for example, like... But then... Because then you'd at least have Coutinho for his double next week, which is the better double. And then if you really want to go into Watkins next week and he looks good like this week, for example, then you could just move into Watkins. But I feel like Watkins' ceiling is a little low because of the Liverpool game. I know there was once a game where Watkins did absolutely torture Liverpool, but I'm just not seeing that happening right now. Yeah, I do like either of them to... I just think, like, long term, you still want to have those 2 Villa players because you're ahead of the curve there. The rest of the team looks perfect, to be honest. And then, I mean, Saka's like that main threat this week, where, especially with Mount, Foden, Diaz, all these sort of players, you think that they'll be rotated. So that's my concern. And then Ederson sort of covers you versus a lot of people who are playing double city defense. So yeah, I think the best move is maybe just the 1 transfer. Yeah, and I feel like, yeah, maybe no need to knee jerk away from Pookie, because I mean, for the most part, Watkins has been in quite a barren run, right? Still, I don't think he's been necessarily explosive. I know he scored a penalty in one of the recent games, and then, I mean, still, missed out in 2 games. Highly expected, I think, that he doesn't score versus Liverpool, versus Burnley, who are seemingly in good form too. That's a bit of concern from my point of view. Thank you so much for joining a part of the live stream. Cheers to the risk. Yeah, I mean, if you like the risk, I just feel like the cash move is the one for next week. But I can understand if you're bench boosting, and unfortunately, there's just not many players at that price point, right? Because I guess Zinchenko is the only other option. Like Zinchenko might be an interesting bench boost option. That's my last thought on that. But otherwise, yeah, makes sense. It's also tempting to just roll. I feel like Saka really is generally super explosive. So that's my kind of concern. I feel like both games for Arsenal are really open for them, and we have to be reminded that Saka's on penalties. So that's the tough thing. Yeah, I agree with you on Foden's expected minutes. It could be quite low. And I'd say so. Better fixtures than Arsenal, haven't kept clean sheets in a while. That's a fair point, yeah. True, but the thing is, I guess with Richarlison, the thing is you have people on your team and on your bench already who have a double double. So it's not like you're foregoing the Richarlison move this week because you're playing a single game week player. If that kind of makes sense. Like the comparison to Richarlison on your bench this week are all double game week players. So I feel like you have to kind of factor in the hit as well with that, and then not really think about the double double aspect. But up to you. Just feels wrong taking out Mount, but might be for the best. That would also leave like 3 mil in the bank. Yeah. It is a lot to chase, but man, the pressure must be insane at your rank. Coutinho. I don't know. I think Coutinho has been the worst player. So I feel like if we think even just short term, the form hasn't been great. Maybe it does make sense to actually just go out of Coutinho this week, go into Saka, hope that Mount does well in the first game. Because realistically, both Mount and Coutinho have a single game week ceiling, right? We expect Mount to be rotated one of the games. Yeah, I feel like that could be the better play. Converse defense not playing on BB. If he plays both, he's in. Going to keep thinking about it. Thank you. Gotta go now. Have some good rest, Z. Take care. And also, feel free to I'll send you a Discord link actually, and you can join our Discord server as well to access the private chat as a member. Maze, so thoughts on something like this? Kane to Nketiah, Ramsey to Son, Doherty to Matip, Shard to Holgate. Very nice moves. Not so. The rest look good. So James sent a message. Hey, could you check my team? Thinking Kane to Richarlison, Robbo to Diaz. Could maybe fund KDB with a -4 for captain over Cancelo. Yeah. I don't really like going out of Kane this week. The triple Villa is a little worrisome, but it seems like you're probably not going to go out of him. Robbo to Diaz. Now that's quite the punt. The bench actually looks quite stacked right now, so I'd be quite happy to be in this position. I think you keep the team as it is because I feel like you've already got Cancelo, Laporte. Worst case scenario is like City just lose one of the clean sheets, which is highly possible. Probably the Newcastle game, if we're being honest. And then it kind of capitulates for you in terms of the value of the move because Robertson is such a valuable asset, especially for 37, 38. Going forwards. I think people think that he's a bad option for this week, and I think that's a fair point if you expect him to be rotated. But when it comes down to it, I feel like Robertson is someone who, it's easier to kind of get out of a double City defense than it is to get out of a triple City defense. Like that is a kind of very locked in position. So I would actually probably think about keeping your team as it is. 4.2 left. Oh, that's so tough. So you can't get Tavares, can you? What about Mikolenko? Mikolenko then? I would probably prefer him. Rajan. I had one free transfer and Broya to Nketiah. No, I think you don't make any other free transfers. I think that's fine. How much is Fofana though? I'd be just interested to know. Yeah, I think you don't make any other transfers. I think you're in a good position there. Bench boost or triple captain getting 36. I think bench boost for me. Magnus, 2 frees, 2.0 mil in the bank. No idea what to do. Bench boost 36, 3 hit 37. So I guess we have to go out of Ramsey. The options are kind of limited. 2.0 mil in the bank though, so we could push up, but unfortunately there's no one to really push up to. You are free hitting in 37, so that kind of invalidates the move. Maybe if we just save some money to make a defensive move, is there an opportunity there? You are bench boosting as well. And we want to go out of Broya. So Broya to Nketiah. Keep Gelhardt. I think we keep Gelhardt, unfortunately, and we just go Ramsey. Maybe there's a move to be made with Havertz and Ramsey. I'm not really seeing it, though. How much is Ben White, actually? Have a look. Ben White, 4.6. So we could go into Diaz, actually. And I think Broja to... How much is Broja? Broja is 5.4. So you need 0.2, and then you need... I mean, I think you go Broja, White to Diaz. Bench for 36, straight at 37 is the current plan. Makes sense to do Ramsey to Gordon, Broja to Nketiah. Make some plans for White. So the one thing that kind of worries me about the Ramsey to Gordon move is I do like it, but I don't like it for a hit. So if it is within your free transfers and you're able to do that, then I think it makes sense. You're actually in a very similar position as the player that we just looked at in terms of having Broja and also Ramsey. Size Liverpool, move to Schmeichel, worth it. Yes, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you want to replace one of them, I'd replace Ramsey to Gordon and then probably skip the move from Salah to Schmeichel. I think that's kind of how I would play it. So I'd like for the first move. So Henry says Ramsey out and he sells Barnes. Tough. We already have 2 transfers on a -4, Schmeichel and Nketiah. Should I take a -4 to get Gordon from Ramsey or a -8 and pull funds from Barnes or Werner? Oh, gosh, that's tough. Okay, so Ramsey's kind of in the mud. Barnes hurts to look at as a resident Barnes hater here. Could we upgrade Barnes by going out of Matip? I mean, Robertson to Matip. No, it's too many hits, I feel like, because you've already taken hits. Everything has to cost. I feel like you keep the team the same. Maybe you could be the Barnes Whisperer, but I'm not a fan of Barnes. I just don't like the -8 to go out of your players, though. Because for me, Werner's like 0.2 more, right? You don't have... How much in the bank do we have? Perfect. And I hope Gelhardt gets that kind of super sub haul that works out for you. He's too expensive if I go with these transfers. Could drop Matip down to Tavares and get Mykolenko over Holgate. Ah, right, okay. Nah, I think... Okay, no. Yeah, I think just go Holgate in that sense. I'm just going to go back on YouTube chat because I haven't checked YouTube chat in a while. Henry, it does say that actually you've been a member for 6 months, so thank you so much. Okay, I've actually missed a lot of YouTube chat. Apologies. Kind of got stuck into the tweets. So I'm going to stick with YouTube chat for a bit. Who would be your ideal forward? Nketiah versus Jesus versus Richarlison. I think long term, if you don't have a 3-hit 37, I think Richarlison's clearly the better option. If you had a 3-hit 37, I'd be much happier to kind of gamble into going for Jesus. John, I think I'm rank Cessignon, whatever his name is, perfect for this guy. I'm rank 85 right now. I did peak at around 3k at one point. I've had a pretty bad run lately, but mostly my fault. Been a bad season in terms of moves, where I kind of avoided Saka, who has hurt me the most as of late. Hi, Fran. Which move do you think is best? Pope and Mateta out for Schmeichel and Nketiah, or Pope and Whitehorse out for Foster and Richarlison? I do like Foster and Richarlison, but I think once again the logic kind of prevails where it really depends on whether you're free hitting or not. Because I feel like the first line of move makes sense. I mean, I like Schmeichel a lot more than Pope, if I'm being honest. And then Nketiah is a much better option if you're not free hitting. But Richarlison has such value in terms of 36, 37 that it does depend on the chip you're going to play. And I think you'd put your priority over Richarlison over Nketiah. He could go Young to Coleman or another Everton defender. Yeah, that's a fair point, Michael. Thanks. Prashant, Captain Salah or KDB. Keep James or twist to Laporte. I don't like the twist to Laporte. If you can twist to Diaz, I'd much prefer that. I just feel like Laporte could be rested one game. Ake could deputize as a left centre-back in one of those games. If you guys would like the video, that'd be really appreciated as well. Just as a side note, would you do Salah to Son? I probably wouldn't. I think Salah has probably the chance to start both games and is still very good. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for the DM. I did have a look at yours. Not a massive fan of Arsenal defense. Completely agree. I feel like the only reason why you want to go into Tavares this week is if you're looking at bench boost. But Arsenal defense, they haven't kept a clean sheet since Tierney has kind of found his way out of the team by being injured. What do you think is the best? James Foden to Laporte, Son for a -4. I like the first move because it involves Son, and then I can't really back the Iheanacho move when I'm looking at move C. That's a rough bench boost low. Who would you sell Mount due to rotation risk? No. It depends on your kind of situation. I feel like if every other player in your team is someone you're happy with, then maybe you could sell Mount. But the problem with Mount is that all the options that you can move around Mount from are super rotatable. So you have the issue with Foden, who might not start one game, maybe, and then Diaz and Jota will probably alternate games. So that's really tough. You could maybe move down to Madison even, but I feel like he'll get rested because he has some sort of hip injury, and maybe they'll take something precautionary with him. As far as Mount, just going back to him briefly, I also really I think Mount is one of the best options in Game 38 when he plays Watford. Salah to Son this week, I'm not a fan of that move. Zaha or Nketiah, definitely probably more of a kind of Zaha-minded player if you're not free hitting. Son versus Salah captaincy, I'd probably go with Salah if I'm being honest. I think Salah could be benched for the second game. That is a fair point, Frederick. I know they have the FA Cup final to play, but I think that he's so fit that it's very likely he could do well. Clegan, hope you're doing well. Good day to you as well. What's the best mid for 8 mil? Already have Salah, Kulusevski, Saka, Gordon. I think if you want to take a punt this week, it's Luis Diaz. Would you take a -16 then bench boost? Honestly, no. I would try to think about what kind of hits you can avoid if possible. Will Dean start? More than likely, it doesn't seem like he's injured. Non FPL related, but what do you think? What do you think is your Premier League team of the season? If we're talking about if I want to build like a starting 11, I think because Diaz missed so many games due to injury, I feel like I would go Laporte. I'd probably go Van Dijk, Robertson, Trent, Son on the left, Salah on the right. My forward would be Ronaldo. My midfield, this is the toughest one. I think it's a tough question. I'd have to think about the midfield actually, because I feel like the Chelsea midfielders have dropped off a little this season. And then when I think you have to kind of fit maybe Bernardo in there. I think he's had a good year, but KDB probably still takes preference. That's tough. Gallagher had a great start to the first half of the season, and I feel like he's quieted down a bit. But for sure, the whole season, I mean, you have to think about the first half of the season as well. That's a good point. I actually need to refresh myself with some names, and not just think. I won't be thinking about FPL obviously because it's non-FPL related. Ward-Prowse has had a good year. Madison's missed a few too many games. I mean, Foden's had a great year as well, but also missed quite a few. It's so tough to also bench Saka, who I think has had a wonderful season. I'm kind of forgetting about him, but him and Bowen have been fantastic. So, unfortunately, they have to be benched because Son and Salah are just that crazy. And then your keeper's probably Alisson. I generally can't really think about options. I think Fernandes has had a huge drop-off of a year. Tielemans, I don't think he's played as much as he really wanted. And gonna want. I think I'd have to kind of shove Bernardo in there somehow. Create an imbalanced midfield. If I wanted like a more well-rounded team, I'd probably still pick Rodri as my defensive mid. I think Rodri deserves a shout this season. And then I think it would have to be a Liverpool midfielder. But it's really hard to kind of to pick between the Liverpool midfield options because I think they've all had quietly good seasons, but no one has had a particularly exceptional one from them. So maybe I'd have to pick someone like, Gallagher for having such a talismanic first half of the season as well. It's a good shout, Henry. I'd probably, I mean, Fabinho, I think over the course of time, I'd prefer Fabinho as a player, but I think Rodri's had a better season. Antonio had a crazy start, but I think he had like one of the craziest starts for the first few weeks, and then I remember instantly he got a red card, and probably since then he hasn't been a good option. Is Holgate nailed? I believe so, and I think also that there's I think because Godfrey's not fit, that's a good position for him to be in. Good luck to everyone in this game week. I'm probably going to skip out on answering questions. Let me just actually give a quick go. Done a big dumb and brought in Lookman, and then had to replace Ramsey with Gordon. Currently on a -4. ML tied with 2 others. 1 mil with the bank. I actually don't think. I think Lookman's better than Barnes for sure, so don't stress about that. I guess you keep. I think, yeah, you just try to bring in a keeper, right? How much is Gatsby? Okay, 3.9. So we can move him to a 4.9. I mean, you just probably keeper wise this week kind of doubles what I like to look at. I think you just bring in a keeper this week, the way your team's set up. I just don't know if Foster's the one. What is another option this week that's quite good? I need to think about keepers, just refresh myself. You can't go Ramsdale because he's too expensive. I guess you have to go for Pickford. Hope to keep a clean sheet versus Watford. Yeah, I think Pickford. Let's see. Hey, Braden. Yeah, I'll let you kind of populate your question, and then I'll have a look at responding. Just thinking going into Zinchenko, Matip for Sean, Cody as well as Pickford, and Richarlison for Saw and Dennis for this week's bench boost. That's actually not a bad move. I do like the differential with Zinchenko. I do admire you for being brave as well going there. Hey, bro, which of these moves would you make? So Trenton or Gordon, Alonso and or Saka. I like. I think I'll actually spend some time with you privately, Henry, later, so we can just discuss that. Would you make any transfers? I'm bench boost. Want to get maybe some City players, but don't know instead of who. No free hit also. Fair enough, yeah. So, I mean, obviously you're kind of set up for 37, with the exception to maybe Crystal Palace if you wanted to go for them. You already have cash, so that's another setup there. The backline looks good. I wouldn't make any transfers. Could you go Mount to Mars? Because I feel like the issue, so you have triple Liverpool, so you can't really touch that setup. It's a very clean setup that you have. All the players have a great week, in my opinion. I think Alonso has probably a better week than Mount. And then with Mount, I think you just want to replace him, potentially. So I think Mahrez is a slightly better option than Foden this week, just because we're so concerned about the minutes. That's an option. I think that's the only one I'd really suggest. Any transfers I make now will have to be for a hit. Bench with 36. Injuries have caused problems, right? So we have to kind of get out of Livermento. It's a tough situation because only Tavares is an option, but we could go into, I think, Ramsey to Gordon. Man, Bro is such a tough one to get out of as well. Ramsey to Gordon. Do we try to get out of? That's tough. Yeah, the injuries have caused a lot of problems. To go for João Pedro, Gordon, Sessegnon, or Mateta, Gordon, Emerson. Interesting. And Mateta's not a bad option, actually. But I feel like the Mateta move could just be reserved for next week, right? I don't really know if Mateta scores this week, and is it worth a hit? I don't know if Mateta's worth a hit. Because I feel like Mateta's ceiling isn't super high, so I feel like you want to make a move around Ramsey, who probably might not have a great ceiling whatsoever. Go into Gordon and then make another move for Livramento, and they kind of just bank in the fact that, you know, Broja might get 1 point, but he's actually saving you from taking a hit when Mateta could realistically have a ceiling of 2. Does that sort of make sense? Foster, Shar, Ramsey, Weghorst to Pickford, Laporte, Gordon, and Nketiah for a -8. Great moves. Free at 37. Should I do Kulu, Kane to Foden, Richa for another -8? No, I don't think so. I think you keep faith. Well done there. Not sure if Matip will start both games. Hi mate, sorry brother, you have 10 points out of my friend. Perfect. Good to see you in that position. I plan to play the bench boost chip this week. Do you think it's worth bringing in Mikolenko for Kuku? Yeah. So I've actually, yeah, so Mikolenko is definitely an interesting option, especially for 37. Yeah, I think Matip will start both games. Good luck. Frederick, hey, nice to see you. I'm benching James, but do you think another option would be better? I'd prefer James over Rudiger, but I mean, completely up to you. I get your point of view where maybe Rudiger, you see him as someone who starts both games. James might, you know, just do the old James thing this season where he gets 0 or 18 points, and he's more than likely going to get 0 and 1 this week. But I always like to gamble with the upside, and I like James. All right, so just going back to the YouTube chat very briefly. Rodri DM for sure. All right, sorry, I think the YouTube chat might not have been refreshed, so I'm just gonna quickly check that. Can you check my message on Twitter? Really need your wits. I think I did respond, so thanks. Nice to see you, Yassine. You have Werner and Daka. Want to get rid of one of them? Probably get rid of Daka first, I would say. I feel like, especially with Vardy back, that's a very dangerous territory. Especially with Iheanacho scoring that crazy goal for Spurs last week. I'd want to get rid of Daka. How much is Daka actually? Sorry, because I haven't really been following his price. Yeah, wow, he's expensive too. So yeah, definitely go out of Daka if you can. What kind of options are available to you if you go out of Daka? Braden, thanks for being around. Should you give Sterling one last chance? Chef FPL, I don't know. If you have the opportunity to go into Sun, I would say goodbye to Sterling. Or I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to side grade Sterling into Mahrez, so I'm not a huge fan of that. If let's say going into other options requires a hit, Chef, then maybe give him one last chance. But I'm not a huge shout on him. Iheanacho definitely could be a good shout. I mean, he scored a crazy goal last week. If you've got Son, I feel like, yeah, maybe just give Sterling one last chance. Because we don't know what's going to happen with the minutes. Ultimately, he's rested. You know, he could have the opportunity to score anyways. He could even get onto the penalties, so that could be a big plus. Yeah, fair enough. Give Sterling one last chance. All right, I think so. If I just show you guys my team for this week, terrible sort of bench. Kind of feels bad to put Dennis. Would you guys play Dennis or Nketiah? It's actually a good question. I've got a question for you guys if you can help me out. But otherwise, I think the team kind of plays itself for me. I still like James. I don't really have too much faith in Dennis, but I think it's because I do think Dennis is actually quite a good player, but I think just Watford, this team just doesn't create. The chemistry hasn't really been built. First of all, this team can't get clean sheets, and their defense is individually woeful compared to what they were as, you know, the best sort of championship defense last season. And then, yeah, I just feel like there's not enough chances being built up for Dennis. He was still quite instrumental in the previous game. I think if I look at understat here, we still saw a lot of key passes from Dennis. So in this Burnley game here, you can see that, for example, a player like key passes was all Dennis. Sarr is completely out of form. He's just not involved whatsoever. Dennis was still involved in terms of any of the chances significantly that Watford created. But when it comes down to it, it's like when the team is building less than 0.8 chances a game, I mean that's hard to watch, especially when you know they can't go out there and get a clean sheet versus teams. So Dennis all day. He's more clinical than Nketiah. I agree with the clinical point. Fixtures are better too. I do like Arsenal versus Leeds though. I think that's quite a nice fixture. I'm just kind of, I'm just hoping that basically the Tottenham game's like super open. I do like Dennis at home versus Everton. Not a huge fan of Crystal Palace away, even though, yeah, I don't know. I think like I wish I could play a 12 this week, but I feel like I'm going with Nketiah. It might be wrong, to be honest. Dennis has done quite well. I remember he got an assist for City as well. He's the only interesting player there, but I think the way I'm going with is I've been burnt a few times by picking players from the worst team this season. So I'm kind of sticking with Nketiah maybe. But yeah, that's it for the stream today. Unfortunately, I won't be with you guys for the sort of deadline stream, but I will be posting a team selection for you guys here in terms of the live stream. You'll probably know what my team selection looks like because I've kind of previewed it to you, but maybe there'll be an additional -4. I was definitely tempted to move on from Mount, but I think just because of the rest possibilities, and maybe I could even change Nketiah and Dennis if I have any last thoughts on that, but I think I just like Nketiah because it seems like he's backed up by the minutes. And yeah, take care, guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful game week ahead. Make sure to make your transfers. Make sure to check on the latest injury news. We had updates today on Ramsey, for example, who seems like he's very unlikely to play. Richarlison has a knock, for example. Ben White still is struggling for fitness, but no kind of key major takes. If you're thinking about Champions League, I thought a lot of City players got very tired. Walker was re-injured. Laporte looked super lethargic, so he might be rotated one game potentially. And I think when you think about City, they're probably going to start playing their full strength side week in, week out now. So I would actually expect less rotation from City because I think he'll just play his best 11 towards the end of the season. And there's less chances to kind of, let's say if you're going for someone like Sterling, this might be their last week to go for Sterling because it's more than likely players like Foden and Jesus and Mahrez, who have actually contributed more over the course of the season, will actually stick within the team. And that's sort of how I feel about that week. All right, take care, guys. See you very shortly.